Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Hollywood's most successful producer of movies and television, Jerry Bruckheimer.
Thank you so much.
Oh my God, you have not changed.
Either of you.
Oh yeah, right. He has to say that, but you really haven't. And you've had quite a career. I mean, you've made more than 60 movies and more than 2,000 hours of television, if that wasn't enough. And we all are familiar with all your biggest hits and franchises. I'm going to read them so I don't forget them, but I'm not including everything. But let's start with F1, which is your latest movie with Brad Pitt, directed by Joseph Kosinski, which you'll be seeing tonight after our interview. And then we have, of course, Flashdance, Days of Thunder, The Rock, Crimson Tide, Armageddon, Dangerous Minds, Con Air, Enemy of the State, Pearl Harbor, and of course, the hugely successful franchises Beverly Hills Cop, Top Gun, Bad Boys, Pirates of the Caribbean, National Treasure, and then Jerry has produced a number of successful TV series, including multiple versions of CSI, The Amazing Race, Cold Case, and Without a Trace, among many others. So, I mean, it's an unbelievable resume. Now, you've had an incredible career, and you grew up in Detroit. And along with your lifelong passion for film, you've also had a lifelong passion for sports, right? And ice hockey and other sports. I remember you took me to my first and only ice hockey game, and it was so cool because Wayne Gretzky was there. Wayne Gretzky doesn't mean anything to me, but it meant. But he was a friend. He was a good friend of Jerry's, and it was like, oh, Claudia, I want you to meet Wayne Gretzky. I'm like, okay, cool. Anyway, it was really fun, fond memories. And then when you were in Detroit, you were actually working in the advertising business, right? You were a commercial producer.
Well, I started in the mailroom after I graduated college. I went to University of Arizona. Mm-hmm. That's the only school that would take me. My grades were so good. And moved back to Detroit and started in a mailroom for an advertising agency. Shows you what a college education could do for you.
Right, exactly.
I could have saved 4 years of my career. I could have started right after high school in the mailroom. But it was a great experience. I worked my way up and eventually moved to New York and did all the Pepsi television and radio advertising.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, after I won a bunch of awards, I came to California.
And so what did you take from working in the advertising world what did you adopt?
Well, I was always a still photographer, but what making commercials taught me is the language of film. All about film cameras, films, all kinds of things that you don't learn when you're just doing a still photographer.
Right.
So I learned all that in advertising. Then you had to tell a story in 30 or 60 seconds. You had to sell a product. You had to have a unique selling position. So you learn a lot of things in advertising to be about clarity, and you have to have a unique way of selling something. And then we always tried to do that with our commercials.
And as I said, you've always been interested in sports. When did you get first interested in car racing? I mean, was it before Days of Thunder? Is that what prompted you to do that movie, or?
No, Tom Cruise came to us and said, I want to do a movie about NASCAR. And we developed a script, and we're very fortunate he actually acted in it, and we got it made.
Yeah.
So that was
it helps to have Tom Cruise say yes.
But what's great about what I do is I get dropped into worlds that all of us will never be a part of. And what we try to do is show you how it actually works, how these people who live in these worlds have their daily lives and the excitement of what they do, and we give that to an audience. We call that a process movie, and that's what CSI was. We told you the world of these investigators, and F1 is the same thing. We drop you inside the world of F1. You don't have to know anything about racing at all, and we will tell you what that world is like.
So you've worked with, obviously, some of the biggest movie stars in the world, from Tom Cruise to Denzel to Will Smith, Mel Gibson, Johnny Depp, but you never worked, I don't think you've ever worked with Brad. So how did that come about, and how did you convince him to do your movie, or was he taken by the script, or how did that evolve?
Well, it all started when we were making Top Gun Maverick. Joe Kosinski, who directed it, said, I've been watching Drive to Survive on Netflix, and they focus on last place teams because the better teams wouldn't cooperate because they were afraid that they were going to be made fools of or that create drama around those teams. And Joe said it's so interesting that these teams don't get any points. And that's the interesting part of it. Let's create a story about a last place team and how they strive to get 1 point or one victory. F1 is a really interesting sport if you don't know anything about it. There are 10 teams, 2 drivers on each team, but it's the only sport where your teammate is your competitor. You always want to be the number 1 driver on your team because that's the one who gets paid the most. So that they compete. I mean, they'll crash into each other, just try to win a race and beat your teammate. That's how competitive it is.
Right, and that's really what the movie focuses on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what we did is Joe had the idea, and he had met Lewis Hamilton through Tom Cruise, because Lewis wanted to be one of the pilots in F1, in Top Gun. But when Joe explained to him, you have to take 4 months off to make the movie, he said, I have a day job, I can't take 4 months off. So, but he had his number, so he called him up and said, I want to make the most authentic racing movie about Formula One. Would you come in and produce it with us? So we had a lunch, he agreed to do it. He loves movies, he sees a movie a day. He's a real fan. And he, by the way, he's a 7-time world champion also of F1. So he's an amazing athlete. And we started there, and then Joe had a meeting with Brad and said, here's the story I'm thinking about, and would you be interested in doing it? And he said, of course. So he's always been interested in racing, and he actually drives motorcycles and loves it. So the one thing Brad said to Joe is, he said, if we're going to do this, we got to do it for real. I want to drive. We can't fake it. We can't have the wind machines and do it against process and screens like that. So we devised a plan to make the movie where our 2 heroes drive the cars. And we took our story with Aaron Kruger, who wrote Top Gun Maverick, around to 9 different studios. And every one of them bid on it. They all wanted it. But Apple was special because what they agreed with Joe and Brad and myself to make this movie for real and actually go to the races and actually film it the right way. Then the next move, we had to convince, you can't make the movie without F1. They have to agree to it. So we went to London. Joe was smart, he brought Brad with us. And nobody's going to refuse a meeting with Brad Pitt.
Right.
So we met with the head of Formula One, which is Stefano, and Stefano said, yeah, it's very interesting, but Joe was even smarter. He walked across the street because he had rented a screening room, and he showed Stefano Top Gun Maverick 3 months before it came out. And so he saw that movie, he said, oh my God, if you could do this for our sport,
Right.
it'd be fantastic. And then he walked him back over there, and what he did is he made a reel. He took some of the visual effects that we did for Top Gun. Like, we had F-18 planes, but we didn't have the F-14s, they don't fly anymore. We didn't have the Russian jets. So he filmed the F-18 and then skinned it for all the other planes, digitally skinned it. And he took a race and took part of a race of F1 and skinned the car he wanted us to have in the movie in that sequence. And they could see how seamlessly it could be. Then the next problem we had is we had to go to the 10 different teams because they have to lean in, and we have to show it to all the team principals and the drivers. Now, Mercedes, who Lewis was driving for, had a huge competition with Red Bull that year, and they were arch enemies. So Christian from Red Bull was sure he was going to be the villain, and his drivers, Max, were going to be the villains in the piece. So it almost took us a year
Wow.
to convince all the various teams and drivers that they weren't going to be the villains in the piece. It was actually a sport. Our movie is about the competition between these 2 drivers. By the way, how many people are here for the first time seeing the movie?
Oh, good.
Fantastic.
Wow, you're in for a treat.
Fantastic.
A treat.
So the next thing, after we had Apple involved and Aaron was writing the script, we took Brad and Damson, who's the co-star in the movie, and in order for him to be the co-star, we had to take him on a track to see if he could drive a car. So we put him in some really fast cars, and he passed the test. Then the next thing we did is we rented track space, and they trained for 4 months, starting in just a sports car and then moving up from to an F4 car, an F3, and then finally an F2, which is the car that he eventually drove. And what Mercedes built the car for us, Joe helped design it with their designers, and then we put it over an F2 engine because an F1 engine takes 35 people to start.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
Just to start it?
Just to start it.
Okay.
And F2 takes 2 people.
Oh.
So that was a lot cheaper for us. So we built our frame around a Formula 2 car, but they were going at still 180 miles an hour.
Oh, God.
And by the way, it's even safer going faster because when you come into these corners, you want the downforce to push you around these really tight turns. And the faster you go into the corner, the better the downforce is. So
Maybe
it's
for
safer
you.
for them to drive faster.
Really?
Which was a unique conversation with our insurance company, let me tell you.
It's kind of counterintuitive.
But everything when you see this movie, it's done for real. There's no process. They're actually in these cars, and we traveled to 9 different races around the world twice. Because the first time we were in Silverstone, getting ready to film that race, and the actors went on strike.
Oh, God. Oh,
So
my God.
we shot for 4 days, and then fortunately for us, Joe went around to the 9 other races and did a lot of the car footage, the long shots and things like that. And then we went back the next year and did it all over again, all 9 races with our actors this time. So it was really a long process, and there was a writer's strike in the middle of that too. So we had, we had them both.
And what about COVID? Did you have to deal with COVID?
It was right at the end of COVID.
Oh, good.
So
Okay.
we were okay. But, when you make a movie like this and you look at it, first of all, he created 6 cameras in the cockpit of an F-18. And the Navy said, you can't put 6 cameras in here. And Claudio Miranda, who's our cinematographer, he did both movies. He went in the cockpit and said, what is that there? We don't need that. What is that there? Well, that's a missile system. We don't need a missile system. So he took all this equipment out of the F-18, and we got our 6 cameras in there. So what we did for F1 is he took the camera that we were using, and they shrunk it by 1/3. And so the camera became very small. And then they took 16 different camera positions on the F-18 car, only 4 at a time. So there were cameras all around the car. So that's why it gets the authenticity.
Oh, yeah.
Then what you had to do is you had to get the sound. Since we had an F2 engine, they don't sound exactly like an F1 engine. So we had to film the F1 cars with their sound. And our sound supervisor, Skywalker, had to go all these different races because they sound different.
Even though the layperson would not know the difference?
Would not know the difference. And Lewis Hamilton, who's our partner, he would say to us, oh, you're going into turn 3 at Silverstone. It sounds like you're in 3rd gear. You're supposed to be in 2nd gear. It's that detailed on how they made this movie.
Right.
That's how authentic it is.
And it's so immersive in experience. I mean, you literally feel like you're in that race car going around those tracks. It's scary. It's really scary, which obviously required incredibly precise editing. So can you talk about the
Our
editing
editor
process?
had, like I said, he had 5,000 hours of film
Whoa.
to go through. And just what Joe did, he was trained as an engineer and an architect. So he storyboarded almost every frame of the movie. And the first time when we shot a lot of the car footage, we cut in the little storyboards of where the actors were supposed to be. So we did voiceover with our own voices because the actors were on strike. So you could look at the movie with some of the car footage and these little storyboards. And that's how we corrected some of the story we felt wasn't working. Aaron came back in and did some more work. But that's a process you go through constantly. I got to tell you, we were filming in Abu Dhabi, and it was our last race. And Brad gets out of the car. It's his last lap. He was so unhappy because he wanted to drive some more. It was my happiest day because nobody got hurt.
Right. Oh my God, the insurance you must have had on that movie was probably astronomical.
Yeah, well, listen, thank God for Apple.
Right. Well, speaking of Apple, let me ask you this question. So, you always make movies for mass audiences, right? And
We'd like to. We don't always get there, but we'd like
but
to.
that's your intention. Okay. And this movie, because of its unique subject matter, it could argue that it was, you might have a limited audience, like how many people are familiar, as you said, with F1. So did it take a lot of convincing Apple to, bankroll this movie?
No, I think that when they heard the story, because look, we're great at giving explosions and doing all kinds of cool stuff. but it's always about the emotion. And we got to move you. This is a redemption story. You want to fall in love with Brad and take his
That's not
journey.
hard.
That's what we try to do.
Right. So that it was not a hard sell, so to speak.
Well, it's you have previews. You do a preview, and we do blind previews. So you invite an audience. You say it's a summer movie. They won't tell you what it is. So the minute they announced the movie that it was about racing, a bunch of the women wanted to get up and leave. Said, I don't care anything about racing. And so you take 20 of the people who saw the movie and do a focus group. And so one woman raised her hand and said, as soon as I heard it was about racing, I wanted to walk out. But she said, after I've seen the movie, I want to recommend it to all my friends. And we asked another question to the 20 people. How many of you are familiar with Formula One? One hand went up.
Oh my God.
So this is an education for American audiences. Now we have, I think, 3 races here, which we never had before.
Right.
And so this is like an introduction to this phenomenal sport that when you watch this and you see the pit crew and you see all these people on the racetrack, there are 1,000 people on those teams back in England giving them information.
Oh my God.
That build the cars and engineer the cars. And it's an amazing sport.
So Apple is going to start streaming this, I believe, December 12th, is it?
That's correct.
But I would say, and I think you probably would agree with me, this is not the kind of movie you should see on a streaming platform. It is, because like I said, it's so immersive and you want to be there and, right? Apple, I want everyone to see it on Apple too, but your first experience should be on the big screen, so.
This movie is Brad Pitt's highest grossing movie, and he's had a long career.
It's done, I think, what, 620 million worldwide?
631 million.
Oh, 31, okay. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
And it's the highest grossing sports movie ever.
Yeah. And you did a deal recently, or Apple did a deal with
Formula One.
With Formula One.
Yeah, they're going to broadcast the races.
it. Yeah, that's so cool. That's really, really cool. Well, this has been fantastic, and I wish we had more time. I have like 1,000 other questions, including future projects, but Jerry, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks,
really
Courtney.
appreciate
Really
it.
fantastic for having me here,
Courtney?
and thank you all for coming. And I just hope you enjoy the movie.
You will. You will enjoy it.
One thing I didn't say is the music. The music is by Hans Zimmer, who is, I think, one of the greatest living composers.
But I have to say that the music in all your movies is it's like one of the characters.
Thank you.
All of the music.
And another thing about the music, this was really hard for him to compose because the cars are so loud. The music has to break through it, and he created this kind of techno music that kind of cuts through the sounds of the engines. But it's always about the melodies. And then we added all these phenomenal songs to the movie.
Thank you, Jerry,
Thanks,
so much.
everybody.
This is great. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the movie.